Last October, my friends and I went to a haunted corn maze in Oak Hill, Ohio. It was supposed to be the best corn maze in our area. I want to leave the name out just out of respect for the family that runs it. I was with my friends Joe, Carl, and Cody. We always do haunted house type stuff every October. On the line to get into the attraction, we overheard some kid saying how last year the maze had to shut down for a night because some kid was actually hurt by one of the workers. We joined in on the conversation and apparently someone dressed in one of the costumes actually pushed one of the customers, and they had to close for the night. I guess that added a little bit to the nerves, like maybe we'd feel like the costume actors would actually go above and beyond just the typical jump scares. Once we got in, it felt like a normal corn maze. It started slow, then the occasional actors would jump out from behind a corner or out of the crops. There were multiple speakers tucked away in the backgrounds blasting spooky sound effects to add to the ambience, and it overall was just littered with Halloween decorations and props everywhere. We came to this little split where there were two directions we could go, left and right. There was a sign in the middle with two arrows. The left side said, "This way to safety," and the right side said, "Danger, keep out." So, 2 by 2, we decided to split up. Cody and I went to the left, the safety side. As we walked, we expected it to be the opposite of safety. That this side would probably be the scarier side or have more jump scares. Well, turns out that was right, kind of. We turned this corner, and there was this guy in a costume just standing there holding a pumpkin. The costume was very bizarre. It was an all-black outfit with his weird blank mask over his face. It was a complete pullover mask, but it only had 2 eye holes, no mouth hole, not even holes for the nose. He didn't jump out or make any screaming noises. He just walked up to us holding up the pumpkin, motioning for us to take it. We kind of just laughed, thinking it was part of the gimmick. Then, in a deep, raspy voice, almost like how Batman speaks in the Dark Knight movies, like he were masking his voice, he said, "Take it, please." We looked at him, continuing to laugh while moving forward. He started to follow us, repeating himself over and over, saying, "Take it." The repetition was initially amusing, but as it continued, the humor began to fade. It was as though he was stuck in a loop, unable to break free from the script he was supposed to follow. The joke seemed to have run its course, and it was time for him to return to his designated spot. However, he persisted, following us for what felt like an eternity. His insistence grew more and more unsettling as he continued to repeat, "Take it, take it," his voice becoming increasingly agitated. The repetition was initially amusing, but as it continued, the humor began to fade. It was as though he was stuck in a loop, unable to break free from the script he was supposed to follow. It was as if he had become trapped within the confines of his character, unable to distinguish between the role he was playing and his own identity. The joke seemed to have run its course, and it was time for him to return to his designated spot. However, he persisted, following us for what felt like an eternity. His insistence grew more and more unsettling as he continued to repeat, take it," his voice becoming increasingly agitated. It was as though he had become trapped within the confines of his character, unable to distinguish between the role he was playing and his own identity. It was as if he had become possessed by the character he was portraying, his mind clouded by the illusion he was creating. However, he persisted, following us for what felt like an eternity. His insistence grew more and more unsettling as he continued to repeat, take it," his voice becoming increasingly agitated. Finally, he reached a breaking point, shouting, "Take it or I'll kill you." While I didn't take his threat seriously, given the context of a haunted corn maze, I couldn't help but feel a chill run down my spine. His words were a stark departure from the typical jump scares and playful banter that we had experienced so far. It was as if he had momentarily slipped out of character, revealing a darker side of his persona. It was as if he had momentarily broken free from the constraints of his role, allowing his true nature to shine through. It was a terrifying glimpse into the mind of someone who had become so immersed in their character that they had lost sight of reality. I took the pumpkin from him, hoping to appease him and put an end to the unsettling encounter. Fortunately, he seemed to be satisfied and ceased his pursuit. Quickly after that, we made it to the end, and it was only then when there was enough light that I realized the pumpkin was carved on the inside and the top of it was cut. I grabbed it by the stem and pulled off the top, expecting something to be in there. And oh, there was. On the bottom of the inside of the pumpkin, at first, I didn't know what they were, to be honest. I thought they were some kind of food until I picked one up. I realized it was a severed human finger, a very real one. There were probably 9 more in there. On the side of the pumpkin was a pair of eyes drawn in black Sharpie, and under them said, "Always watching," with a smiley face next to it. My friends and I screamed and freaked out, and we ran to the nearest worker. She didn't know what to do either, as she was just as young as us. She called for one of her superiors, and he called the police. The whole attraction was shut down as police came and basically listened to our story. We stayed on the premises while police searched the place, but it was basically in the middle of nowhere, so he could have been anywhere. The police took the appendages for, I'm assuming, forensic analysis. I don't think a body was ever found to match the fingers. We left that place unharmed that night, but not without a permanently traumatizing experience. A few years ago, my friend Mike and I were heading to a dinner party in Denver on a snowy Saturday night. We decided to stop at a liquor store before the party. It was a pretty annoying detour with the snow falling, but we didn't want to show up empty-handed. We picked out some local craft beers and a bottle of whiskey and headed back to the car. The snow started to pick up as we left the store. Mike ran back in to grab a pack of Zins, his latest nicotine fixation. I was annoyed because I was driving and didn't have the best car. A few minutes later, he came back and we were on our way. The snow was falling even harder now, covering the roads in a thick blanket of white. The drive to the party was supposed to be straightforward, about 20 to 30 minutes through familiar suburban neighborhoods. Things in my life are never as easy as they seem, though. The snowstorm had other plans, turning what was supposed to be a relaxing route into a treacherous journey. I'm not a great driver to begin with, and the car slipping every 10 seconds didn't help matters. After a tense few minutes driving uphill, I turned a corner and saw something no one ever wants to see, a stopped car in the middle of the street. Its hazards were flashing ominously, cutting through the falling snow like distress signals. Both the driver's and passenger's side doors were open. I was tempted to just drive around it, but Mike insisted we stop. Judge me if you want, but I'm not your typical Good Samaritan. I've been through too much BS in my life, and I tend to be distrustful of strangers. I told him we were late, but he urged me to stop with a concerned voice. Mike had gotten me into trouble before with his childlike curiosity, but this was different. Someone could be in trouble. Reluctantly, I stopped the car, and the two of us sat in emotionless silence for a few seconds. Mike asked if we should check it out, which I told him we were doing. He rolled his eyes and told me watching the car from through the windshield wasn't going to accomplish anything. He was kind of right. I really didn't want to get out of the car, though. Nervous about the situation, I asked him if he'd just wait a few more minutes, which he reluctantly agreed to. We sat there watching the eerie blinking of the hazards against the beautiful snowy backdrop. Nothing happened, which I was kind of surprised by. Eventually, Mike said he had had enough and was going to investigate. Before I could stop him, he stepped out of the car. I watched with a rising sense of apprehension as he approached the vehicle. As he was doing so, I could have sworn I saw something dark move out of the corner of my eye. It might have been my worried mind playing tricks on me, but this situation was seeming worse and worse to me every second. Not even 10 seconds later, I thought I saw the car jolt a little, like something had moved in the trunk or back seat. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me, but I didn't care. I made a quick decision and slammed on the horn, startling Mike, who had been inspecting the inside of the vehicle. He understood what I was communicating and sprinted back to the car. I drove off immediately and told him my suspicion that the whole thing was a trap. He was pretty annoyed when I told him I didn't have any actual proof, but I responded in a firm voice that I wasn't going to risk my life for someone who could easily call for help. The rest of the drive was pretty tense, to be completely honest. He was the type of guy to hold a grudge longer than most. We arrived at the dinner party, and things were finally normal again. We were there for several hours, and Mike and I had all but forgotten what happened earlier. After a nice dinner and an enjoyable time catching up with old friends, our host turned on the TV to give some departing guests an update on the snowstorm. He flicked over to the local news, and what I saw was horrifying. The police were issuing reports of a stolen vehicle that had been hijacked not even 2 hours earlier. They were circulating a spoken account from the victim, which went something like this. A woman was driving her teenage son home from a friend's house when she noticed a car in the middle of the road, hazards on and doors open. The two approached the car to see if someone was in distress, and as they did, 2 men sprung out from behind a snowbank and another emerged from the trunk of the vehicle. They held the woman at gunpoint and forced her to turn over her keys. They promptly sped off with the stolen car along with the one that had been used in the trap. I stared at Mike with a look of pure fear. That could have been us, the two of us. We told the rest of the party what happened earlier, and that quickly put a damper on the general atmosphere. The worst thing about this experience is that I'm even more distrustful of strangers than I previously was. I often think about how many people I would have otherwise helped out in a time of need had I not experienced such a meticulous trap. Moreover, the entire ordeal has made me more cautious and aware of my surroundings. I used to be more trusting, but now I'm always on the lookout for potential dangers. This incident has taught me a valuable lesson about the importance of safety and self-preservation. It's a lesson I'll carry with me for the rest of my life.